Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Well, earlier, Paulina had a chance to talk to author and self-made millionaire, Dani Johnson. Now, she is an interesting lady because she just went after her dreams and made it happen. So let's join Paulina and Dani now.
Well, I'm delighted to have back with us Dani Johnson. Dani is an author, speaker, self-made millionaire, and last time she did share her story with us how that at the age of 21 she lost everything. But it only took her 2 years to not only get back on her feet, but become a millionaire. How did she do it? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Starting a business, being an entrepreneur, and just going out there and succeeding in life. Welcome back, Dani.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I want to start with some statistics. You did say in one of your shows that half of Americans dream of having their own business, and only 13% actually do it. Why such a low number?
Isn't that tragic? I mean, it absolutely blows my mind. In fact, we did a show yesterday on this very same thing where I actually interviewed 2 of my clients who are entrepreneurs and getting behind the entrepreneurial mindset. And I believe largely it is because we have trained out of the American people and people around the world, but specifically Americans, we've trained out of them their natural entrepreneurial desires. We've covered it up with school, per se, that says, okay, go to school, get a good education, get more schooling, and go get a job. We don't have classes from kindergarten all the way through college teaching the entrepreneurial life and teaching the entrepreneurial mindset, but instead we're just training people to be in jobs instead of thinking about having their own business, thinking freely, creative ideas and things of that nature.
So do you have to possess certain skills and talents, or can anyone be an entrepreneur?
Well, hello. What was I, right? What was I? I was less than the run-of-the-mill person. I grew up on welfare in a violently abusive, drug-infested home. I was terribly, violently, emotionally abused. I was violently, physically abused, sexually abused, all of it. So I didn't have like this natural ability for business. And I have to tell you that most of my clients have not either. Most of our clients that are at DaniJohnson.com, let me tell you about Elizabeth Miller. Okay, she started baking cookies in her kitchen, taking the cookies to the flea market, selling them. That eventually turned into a bakery. Now she owns a pretzel shop and has franchised the pretzel shops, and she's making a ridiculous amount of money and has become financially independent as a direct result of that. Who was Elizabeth Miller? Just this mom with some kids who just thought, I'll make some extra money selling cookies. Come on, man. Really?
So,
no.
So how do you know where to go? Because there are some businesses available that you can join in and kind of become an independent distributor or an independent something, or you just start from scratch. How do you know? How did you know what to do?
I did what was in front of me is what I did. You know, I was desperate. So I didn't have a whole lot of options. I needed to make money. I was tired of being a homeless woman. So I did what was obvious and right in front of me. And what it was is I had purchased a weight loss program because I was 50 pounds overweight the month before I became homeless. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if I could market this product here in this area. And so I called the manufacturer. I set up a licensing thing. I said, what does it take? You know, how can I sell it here? And they basically told me it would cost a lot of money, but I didn't let that stop me. I went and I found customers first and then took all the money that the customers gave me without giving them product yet. And then I took that into a cashier's check, sent it to the manufacturer. The manufacturer then sent me the product because I created a need for their product. Bam, I was in business. You know, so let me go back to your question because I think it's important. Does it take specific skills? Yes, it takes specific skills, but anybody can learn those skills. One of my clients, Kevin, who I interviewed yesterday on my show, you know, where did he start in business? He said, I started when I was 3, 4 years old selling junk at a garage sale with my parents. And then I started a lemonade stand, you know, and then he tells the truth about college. He wanted more beer money, so he started selling a product, somebody else's product online. He got into the internet industry and made $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which was far more than he needed for beer. And by the way, I led this guy to Christ at one of our business seminars. He loves the Lord today and gives most of the profits of his businesses. He has 4 businesses. He gives most of the profits to the orphan and the poor, as an example that we set for our business. 100% of our profits go straight to the poor. So anyway, does it take skill? Yes. But anybody can learn skill. Does it take strategies? Yes, but all humans can learn strategies. We can learn to do anything. And not only that, it's biblical to be in business. It's biblical to succeed in business. And most of us just don't know that. We've just kind of carved out this mediocre path that everybody else is following, not really wondering, hey, is that really the path for me?
Well, as far as business goes, one of the most common excuses I've heard from people not going into something outside their box was that I'm not a salesperson. And I heard you say that if you're alive, you're a salesperson. Pretty much
everybody is. Everybody is. And that's, again, that's what's so sad. And the reason why people say that is because they've had bad salespeople experiences, right? We've all been on the car lot with the guy, you know, God bless him, we love him, but you can smell last night's whiskey and Bud Light on his breath. You can also smell the 3 packs of Camel cigarettes that he smoked yesterday and that he will smoke today. He's the guy that is like badgering us to test drive a car and doesn't have great people skills, doesn't have great relationship skills. We've all had those experiences before. So, but everybody is in sales. A mother sells her son on doing his homework or choosing the apple instead of the Oreo. A teacher sells education. A teacher sells information, sells knowledge. And if the teacher is not good at selling, then their students don't gain the information. They don't get understanding, and they won't do their homework, and they will not succeed. Every single person who got married sold that person to be their spouse. They did a presentation. They prospected the marketplace. They followed up with that prospect, and they sealed the deal. And so everybody is in sales. It's just that most people don't understand the difference between amateur and professional sales. And if you learn the art of professional sales, you will not be a salesperson. You'll not be seen as a salesperson. You will not act, walk, talk like a salesperson. You'll actually be one that helps to create a buying experience for people. People love to buy. They hate to sell. I mean, they hate to be sold. They love to buy, but they hate to be sold. But all of us love to buy. And so it's about learning how to create a great buying experience for people, not badgering people, not heavy-handed closing people, but learn the professional art of creating a win-win situation for people, and people thank you for making a product or a service available to them. And anyone can learn how to do that. Anybody can.
It seems to me that to be a successful salesperson, whether you're a mother or a teacher or a wife, you have to keep in mind your why. Why are you doing this? I want you to talk a little bit about the purpose and how maybe sometimes, maybe even that, if you do have that why set up correctly, you will be successful. Is that one of the keys?
Yes, it is. And, you know, for some people in the beginning, the why is about money. But then, you know, that kind of pretty well loses its purpose. And if we call ourselves believers, man, I'm telling you, the business world is the greatest place to be able to be fishers of men. That's what I've used my business for all these years, leading people to Christ to the tune of tens of thousands of people we've led to Christ out in the marketplace. We've discipled people in the marketplace, and we've taught them how to make more money, how to find that why, and they're also leading other people to Christ and take the money and use it for a great purpose. And for example, like I said, 100% of our profits, and I'm not on salary for my company. I don't make a dime for what I do with TV, radio, writing books, all our audios, our seminars. I don't take a dime of a salary from it at all. 100% of our profits goes to taking care of the widow, the orphan, the poor, the sick, the kids in the sex trade, the elderly. And that's the power of business. You can use business to change people's lives, to lead them to their Savior, transform their lives with great discipleship by you leading by the example, teaching them that right example, and then teaching them what to do with the money.
So what's the first step? Somebody's watching us right now and okay, I'm ready. I'm going to start that business. What should they do first?
Well, there's lots of different business opportunities that are out there. I think, honestly, the very first thing, if they're ready to start in business now, it's like, what do you have that is around you? Or even there has probably been a friend that has presented a business opportunity to you. Do something. You got to do something. And it's not about finding the right business, because I was not in the right business when I was homeless. I didn't look for the right business. I had something, I had a product that didn't even work for me, honestly, which is also a hilarious story. Okay, but like I said, you know, some people go and they clean houses, and that's their business. Some people do odd jobs. I had a guy that was during, 2008, 2009, the economy was so bad. So he had this idea, I'll become the odd jobs guy. And he went knocking on doors, offering to take out people's trash, fix whatever needs to be fixed, running errands for them. He made 10 grand a month being an odd jobs guy. So he couldn't find a job paying him 10 grand a month, but as a businessman, doing what? Finding a need and filling that need. And so there's so many options that are out there. It's ridiculous how many options there are out there.
There really are. We're going to take a break now, Dani. When we come back, I want to talk about excuses. I want to talk about fears that people have and how we can overcome them. All right? And before the break, I want to give out the website for Dani Johnson. It's DaniJohnson.com. Go visit it. Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us. All right, we're back, and today we have Dani Johnson on the program. It's always a delight and so much energy that I have, like last time, Dani, I had so many questions and we only went through 4, I think. So today I condensed my list a little bit, but we're talking about a specific topic, so hopefully we can go through it. Starting a business, being an entrepreneur. And now I want to kind of move towards things that stop us from doing that, things that even when we start may become an obstacle. Fear, for example.
Yes.
What do you do with fear?
Yes. What was interesting is the interview that I had on my TV show yesterday with one of our clients, with Elizabeth, who has a franchise of pretzel stores, soft pretzel stores. It was very interesting how she had such a childlike faith. And the Bible says that that's what we're supposed to have, is a childlike faith. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. And we got to make a choice every day. Are we going to choose fear and bowing down to the little g God of fear? Or are we going to rise up in faith, trusting our Father in heaven to step out with him in the marketplace to provide for our families? Fear does not pay anything into your bank account, but faith will always bring in an abundance into your bank account. So fear is not just for entrepreneurs. It's not just for people who are looking at starting a business. People who are fearful, they choose to be that way every day. People who are faith-filled choose to be that way every day. People who are choose faith-filled are people who obviously encounter obstacles and opposition and rejection and problems and not having enough money and disasters that happen in the marriage or with the kids. Both parties, both populations have the same problems. The one that chooses faith and to walk by faith and training their mind to be faith-filled by taking action and filling your mind with important training so that you can get good at what you want to do, those people are the ones that win. The ones who choose fear stay stuck. They don't do anything, they don't take action, they procrastinate, they're in indecision, and their lives are just nothing but a pile of rubble. You got to make a choice. Which one will you choose? One will lead to great profits, great things that will happen in your life. The other one's going to lead to depression, which is where the enemy wants you.
Now, when you're facing all those obstacles and thoughts come to mind, am I doing something wrong or is it just God testing me? Is there like a universal answer to that? How do you help people who come to you and say, hey, I've been in my business for a year, no profit, but I don't want to quit because quitters never make it. So what do you say to those people who are just not making it yet?
Yes, I've seen that happen so many times with my clients. I've got hundreds of thousands of clients that are in business and hundreds of thousands of clients that are not in business. Both those things happen in both worlds. Like, am I in the right job, or even am I in the right relationship? Here's the reality, is you got to look at what obstacles are coming at you. The only reason why the obstacles are there is because you lack a skill to overcome. It's not God. God opens doors that no man can shut. God also closes doors that no man can open. That's pretty crystal clear, is it not? Yeah. So if we're hitting obstacles and we're having opposition, it's only a sign that we're lacking a skill that is necessary to overcome that. For example, let me give you Elizabeth Miller, because it's so fresh in my mind. Elizabeth, that's where she was when she came to First Steps to Success, our training seminar, just like the one happening in Austin, Texas in January. They couldn't afford to come. They had over $200,000 worth of debt. They were failing in that business. And what happened was that she heard about spirit-driven success, came to the live First Steps to Success, and started learning some new skills. And she found, oh my goodness, this is what I've been missing. Okay, well now, in 2 years, she's paid off $239,000 worth of debt. She has grown and multiplied her one little pretzel store to now multiple pretzel stores and franchising. We're talking making a crazy amount of money. And what was it? And this is what she said. The thing I was missing was the strategic marketing and relationship skills, communication skills. That's what I was missing, and I didn't know it. I thought it was the business fault as to why I was failing, but it wasn't the business's fault. It was my lack of skill of communicating and working with people at the level that I needed to be able to take the business to that level. So it just means that the business is showing you need some new skills. And I cannot think of a better place to go get those skills. Go to DaniJohnson.com. We have trained up hundreds of thousands of people in business, one of which, Sandy. When Sandy came to me, she was attempting to make a business work online. And she was attempting to do it offline and online. She was trying to market a product, had 3,000 people tell her no. She could not get anybody to buy what she was attempting to market. After Sandy had hired me for consulting, had been to many, she's been to 25 First Steps to Success training events. Today, Sandy makes $2 million net profit a year. This woman is known now all over the world, and she's the chief expert in social media today. She's been on every kind of major media outlet that is out there, but this woman, when I met her, was a complete failure in business. She paid off $469,000 worth of debt in 2 years. She's debt-free. She gives 90% of her income to the poor. So what was it? It wasn't the wrong business. It was the wrong skill. And she had to learn new skills. And it took her a while to learn those skills. And she invested into herself, into the training, into the strategies. And today the woman is an icon in the business world.
Wow. Wow. There are a lot of stories on your website. I must commend you for all the testimonies that you put there, DaniJohnson.com. If you guys want to be inspired, go there and check those out. Dani, I want to go back to when you were 21 and when you started your business. I always had this question, who did you call? You were homeless.
Yeah.
Who did you call? I mean, yeah. I picture you with the, paid phone.
Payphone. Yep. It's a payphone is what it was. So what I started with is I wrote out this little flyer on a piece of what do you call it? Scratch paper. I found a piece of scratch paper. I wrote out a little advertisement. I had no phone, obviously, and so what was it going to say? Meet me at the coconut tree on the left at 3 o'clock. No, I had no home, I had no phone, and I had no product. So I had to creatively figure out a way through communication skills to be able to create a win-win situation and build trust with my clients. And I talk about that and how to do that in the book. First Steps to Wealth. And I don't know if you know this, sweetie, but this is for free on our website.
Yes.
So they can get a free copy of this. They can download it right now as an ebook. And if they want the physical copy, they can pay the shipping to get it to their house. But it's First Steps to Wealth. But I talk about from day one, who did I talk to? I ran a flyer. I then got a guy to give me a voicemail number with a check in the mail, right? He didn't make me come down there and give him the check right away, and thank God. And again, that was some of the communication skills that I had learned, and I talk about those communication skills in the book, First Steps to Wealth. And so that was it. I got 25 phone calls in 3.5 hours, and I called the first person back. I messed up that very first call. I had to re-strategize before I got on the second call, and had a 100% closing ratio after that. So, and again, that's what I teach at First Steps to Success, the step by step by step. How do you start from nothing? Not only that, I think it's important to know this. We have built our businesses all through referrals, no advertising. I was just in a room with 850 people in Ohio teaching business and finance and relationships for 3 solid days. When I asked the 850 people, how many of you heard about DaniJohnson.com by a friend? 99% of the hands go up. That was all a personal referral that sent those people to that training seminar. No one is paid for those referrals. There was no advertising that brought those people in. The rest of the 1% of the room was brought in by how? They saw me on Secret Millionaire, or they saw me on Oprah, or they, heard about me through some radio interview or a television interview that I did. 99% of my database is all because of personal referrals. Somebody else who came to our site, got results, and sent their friends to our site, and that's how we've built that business. And so that kind of strategy builds every business, no matter what the economy is, on no budget at all.
A lot of Christians, I think, are a bit afraid of money, or we have a negative view of money. How do you pray for success?
Lord, your will be done. Deuteronomy 8:18 says that God has given us the power to create wealth. Well, study the Bible, and it's going to show you. He actually tells us exactly how to create wealth. And here's the facts. There's been a lot of bad prosperity teaching out there. And that prosperity teaching is actually nothing but selling a lottery ticket. That if you give to my ministry, then God is going to bless your business. Nonsense. You will not find that in the Bible. But the Bible talks about the skill sets. It talks about that skill brings success. The Bible shows us that even with King David in the book of Psalms, where he says that David led Israel with the integrity of his heart and the skillfulness of his hands. There's specific skills that are necessary in order to make money. And when you use those skills, you will make money. And I believe that as Christians, as we make money, we should not fall into the trap of pleasures. We shouldn't be falling the trap of fast cars, big houses, fancy stuff, as I fell in that trap in my first 10 years of making millions. The last 14 years, buddy, we ain't going there. I work and build businesses to give, to help kids come out of the sex trade, to help the orphan, to help the poor, to help the elderly. And so you don't have to be afraid of money if you're making it with integrity and honesty and giving it away. What's there to be afraid of?
And then you look at your life and see how blessed you are. I love your family pictures that you post. That one trip you had was amazing. Before we're out of time, give one advice to people watching right now. What can we include in our daily lives? Maybe a new habit, something that can help us get us on the path to success.
Number 1, start your day with prayer. Pray for your customers, pray for your boss, pray for the clients, pray for your family. Pray, ask God to change you. Have him show you what it is that needs to change inside of you. We should have him reveal to you what are the things that are hindering your life from being what it is that he desires your life to be. Number 2, read the word of the living God every single day. If you call yourself a Christian, then you better be devouring his wisdom, his direction, his knowledge, his understanding. That's how every Christian should start their day. From there, you want to learn how to succeed? Then take a major shortcut and learn daily from people who have the success. You want to succeed in your job, you want to succeed in business, you want to succeed in finances, you want to succeed in your family, then you've got to pour resources into your mind that are biblically based, that can help guide you according to the scriptures how to succeed. And there's one place I know of that you can get that, DaniJohnson.com. Go there for that advice, listen every day, and I promise you, between you and me and God, you're gonna have the greatest success you've ever experienced in your life.
Thank you, Dani, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, pretty exciting. All right, coming up next, what an honor to have back with us a doctor who writes books. We're trying to figure out when he has time to do that. We'll find out in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. What a delight to have in the studio with us again, our good friend, Dr. Daniel Tomlinson. He delivers a lot of babies.
That's right.
And that's his primary calling, but he also now has a tremendous lay ministry of writing and speaking. And he's written a series of books in the past, but I hold in my hand his new one, On the Road to Emmaus, Seeing Jesus in the Old Testament. And nice to see you. Congratulations.
It's great to be here.
Congratulations.
Well, thanks. It's a real blessing. And yeah, I've kind of departed. My other books were kind of medical, spiritual,
yeah,
you know, allegories in the Bible with obstetrical things, because
right.
I'm an obstetrician.
Yeah.
This book, it's like, you know, just going to depart from that and talk about what's interesting to me in the Bible. And
well,
so
your birth pains one
book
was really interesting,
yeah,
because you lived it. You've seen
right.
through your studies of the coming of Christ and the coming of a child.
Right. That birth pangs is an allegory.
Yeah.
That we're in the third trimester of a figurative pregnancy. So when I see pregnant patients, like, hey, where are they? The Old Testament is the first and second trimester. The birth is the second coming of Christ. The labor is the tribulation time frame, the book of Revelation, if you will. The rupturing of membranes is the rapture,
yeah,
the most dramatic, surprising event in a woman's pregnancy would be the rapture. So it kind of fits, and so I get to see that. You're right.
Well, what made you do this?
Well, you know, I thought I had written everything I wanted to in my two books, Birth Pangs and A Woman's Silent Testimony. And then a pastor that I respect a lot, 3 years ago, said, you know, how you doing, Dan? Well, you've been writing anymore? And I said, well, no, I've written everything I wanted to say. My real calling is, you know, delivering babies. He goes, oh, you know, you're really a good writer. I think you should write some more. Well, you know, when a pastor talks to you, Perry, you kind of think, maybe this is from the Lord.
Yeah.
So I prayed about it for a little bit, and I kind of started thinking it was. And so what interested me was Old Testament types. And so, okay, I started writing about that. About 3 years ago, I would write on weekends, on my days off, and got another book here.
Well, I was kidding around earlier. I said, when do you write? In between contractions?
No, I write on my days off. I'm a morning person, so I would write in the mornings, on Fridays and Saturdays generally.
So many people read quickly through the Old Testament. Those are old stories. I want to get into the New Testament. But you zeroed in on the Old Testament, and you were finding Christ not only in all the books, but basically in all the stories.
He's everywhere. You know, Christ told the Pharisees, the doubters, if you will, they said, search the scriptures because they speak of me. He wasn't talking about the New Testament. They didn't have the New Testament when he said that. He's talking about the Old Testament. You know, scholars call it the red thread, that he's the red thread throughout the Bible. So
did you approach with that in mind, or do you just pick, I mean, how did you start looking?
That's how I approached it. You know, the text for my book, you know, Seeing Jesus in the Old Testament, On the Road to Emmaus, is that story in Luke 24. Where the two men were, you know, the resurrection Sunday, Jesus had risen, he appeared to Mary, and then kind of disappeared, didn't he? And these fellows are walking to Emmaus, which is 7 miles away, and then the stranger comes up and says, well, you know, why are you upset? And they tell him the story, they give him the testimony about how they thought Jesus was the Messiah, but then he was crucified by the Romans, and the chief priests, you know, turned him over. They were like, you know, we don't understand this. And then they say, today's the third day, and our women who are among us have seen visions that he might be around. And then it says, Jesus said, you know, you fools and slow of heart, and he uses fools differently than we would. But to understand all the things that the Scripture taught, it says, beginning at Moses and all the prophets in the Psalms, he talked to him in all the Scriptures, to them in all the Scriptures of things concerning himself. So that must have been a crazy Bible study. And so this book is an attempt to go, what was that Bible study like? You know,
Wow.
what did Jesus tell them? And that's what On the Road to Emmaus is. It's my take from being a Christian and studying the Word for a long time on what that Bible study was like.
All right, let's get into it a little bit. Other than Isaiah, who else speaks of Jesus?
Everybody does, but Moses speaks to him. You know, the 5 books of Moses are, you just start Genesis, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Exodus, all have pictures of Jesus. Isaiah, Zechariah, he has these 7 visions, and they talk about the story of salvation from from the first coming all the way to the second coming. Of course, Micah mentions him and tells us where the Messiah is going to be born. David, the sweet psalmist of Israel, his psalms are loaded with prophecies and pictures of Christ. Of course, Solomon and his Proverbs, and of course in being the wisest man in all of ancient, you know, it's a picture of Christ and so forth. So the Old Testament speakers write about him, they picture him, they typify him quite a bit.
Any surprises when you were doing this?
Well, I broke the Bible or the story into 4 categories, and probably the biggest surprise was that there's songs that sing of Jesus. And the Song of Solomon, as I was studying, the Song of Solomon is just kind of sitting there in the Bible as, it's just a story of, marriage, a man and a woman. But there's a deeper picture, and it's a picture of Christ's love for the church, the shepherd king and his bride. So the Song of Solomon is a wonderful, it's a bestseller, and it talks about Jesus and his love for us.
All right, there's so many other, obviously you see Christ throughout of it. Did you discover a new appreciation for the, maybe the foreshadowing of salvation or of the cross?
Sure. I think that a lot of people wonder, I believe John 3:16 that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. I believe Romans 10:9 that if I confess Jesus the Lord and believe that God raised him from the dead, I shall be saved. But I haven't been that. Maybe I'm messing up a little bit. I'm not. Am I really going to go, or am I going to be left behind? Well, in all of these Old Testament stories, for instance, like the brazen serpent. The people were murmuring and complaining, so these snakes came and were biting in them, and they were dying and they were being destroyed. And so the people said to Moses, pray to God that, give us relief. So Moses prayed to God, and God said, I want you to make a brass serpent and lift it up, and whoever looks at this serpent will be saved, will be delivered.
Right.
Well, everybody who looked at this serpent was delivered, not just some of the people. And so the appreciation, I think, to answer your question, Perry, is that everybody comes through, whether they're saint and sinner alike, if you will, that, God's covers us, Jesus' blood covers us no matter what. Another example of that, before, not to belabor the point too much, would be the first trump. When the law was given in Exodus chapters 19 and 20, it says the trumpet sounded long and all the people came up. Not just some of the people of Israel came up, but they all came up, which is of course a picture of the rapture. It says that God descended on the mount, the people came up, and the trumpet was sounding. That's Thessalonians 4, if there ever was,
right,
where you hear the voice of the child and then trumpet. In fact, whenever trumpets are in the Old Testament, it's talking about the rapture, actually. But everybody came up. And so the appreciation, to answer your question, I get excited just thinking about it, is that good. Everybody's included. Everybody that's in that ship of salvation, if you will. And there's another example, Noah's Ark, He was in that ship, and as long as he stayed in the ship, he was saved from the waters of destruction. So I could go on and on about how the Old Testament pictures salvation.
Did you think you'd see that when you approached this to do this? You knew you were looking for Jesus and everything, but you obviously picked up some more excitement.
It's like the pastor who's preaching. As you preach, you get more revelation. And so, I guess I kind of thought I knew this stuff before I started writing the book, but as you write, you get more and more insights all the time. And I think that is the one, is that everybody gets included.
I also hear a little bit of a heart of an evangelist here. You want to tell everybody?
I don't think I have the gift of evangelism, but I do. I do want to tell people about Jesus and the Word. I have the personality that I can't just go up and say, do you know Jesus?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think I've learned that if you treat everybody like they're already a Christian, you can kind of evangelize them right into the kingdom. So that's a technique that I use, is that everybody I talk to, I think of them as already a Christian, and I'm just talking about the Lord just like you and me are just talking now.
Okay. All right, the book is called On the Road to Emmaus, Seeing Jesus in the Old Testament. Tate Publishing, where is it available? Is it available at the bookstores?
Well, you can get it through Tate Publishing. It probably a less expensive way would be to go to Amazon.com.
Okay.
Now I have a website, drdantomlinson.com.
Okay.
That has links. So I would encourage everybody to go to drdantomlinson.com.
drdantomlinson.com and get a copy. We're going to take a break. I have a big question for him when we come back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. Compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and what an honor to have with us this morning in the studio with us, Dr. Daniel Tomlinson. He's authored his new book called On the Road to Emmaus, Seeing Jesus in the Old Testament. Now, first of all, you can go to his website, drdantomlinson. That's drdantomlinson.com. Get the book there. He will be at Evangel tomorrow from 1 to 3 signing books. Mm-hmm. So you can go to the mall tomorrow and meet Dr. Dan, talk to him, get a autographed copy. By the way, sign that one. Okay. And get a copy of the book. That'll be tomorrow at Evangel. And then this weekend, you're speaking at Calvary Chapel in Grants Pass.
Right. Yeah. The pastor's off.
Denny Stahl there.
Right. Little ministry that I have where I've got some PowerPoint talks that I give, and it's a little different flavor. I'm a doctor, so I kind of speak from the doctor angle, and doctors love PowerPoint. Preachers may be a little different, so it's probably more of a teaching than a preaching. But I've been well received. The folks get turned on when I teach, and so it's a little ministry that I'm thankful to the Lord for.
This is great. Anyway, so check it out tomorrow at Evangel from 1 to 3 there at the Rogue Valley Mall. All right, Dr. Dan, if Jesus is so clear in the Old Testament, in all of those books, and yet all of the stories, why don't the Jews see it?
Big question, and that's the truth. Well, it says, Paul tells us in Romans that the Jews are blinded until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. So we know from the Word that there's kind of a spiritual thing going on with the Jews. They have an explanation for every one of those prophecies. Let's talk about Isaiah 53, where it's the suffering serpent. He's wounded for our iniquities. They say that that's the nation of themselves. Mm-hmm. They've got an explanation for everything. And so all of these principles in the Old Testament, because the Old Testament, we talked about the red thread, that Jesus is in the Old Testament as kind of hidden, the story of Rahab and the
the bloodline of Jesus is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah. So, but it's hidden in a way. It's been said that the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. Mm-hmm. And so they've got an explanation for everything. And they say that the suffering serpent is, for instance, is the nation of Israel itself.
All right, so it is an event yet to occur when the scales drop off, right?
Imagine how the early disciples felt, though. Here they are, they're all Jews, and they, now they're Messianic Jews, and they see all these things. Jesus is explaining to them these things in the Old Testament. They must have been so turned on that first 100 years, where we talk about the church at Ephesus, that early church, how they loved the Lord. It was a love relationship. And I'm sure part of it was because the Old Testament, they saw all these things in the Old Testament that spoke of Jesus.
We have a tendency to read the Old Testament for promises and apply to us. Sometimes we're taught when you see the word Israel, put your name in there.
Yeah.
But if you do that, you could miss the Jesus factor.
Well, you totally could. Now, Israel means governed by God. So I think there's some legitimacy to it. You see an Old Testament promise, and you go, okay, does that fit with the flow of the Word? And if it does, then I think you can claim it. But there's other times that probably is just talking to Israel. You know, Israel, until 1948, people would see these prophecies about Israel and they go, must be talking about the church because Israel doesn't exist. But bam, Israel comes around in 1948, and now, all the eschatology folks are going, maybe there's something to this thing about Israel coming back as a nation.
All right, so where did you see Jesus in Leviticus when not eating?
In Leviticus. Well, I can tell you, the first 5 chapters you have the 5 offerings, the burnt offerings, the meal offerings, the peace offering. All of those are pictures of Jesus, and they're in the book.
Wow.
You know, they talk about Jesus because they're voluntary sacrifices.
Right.
Some of them are male and unblemished, for instance. There's Jesus. Some of them are offered north of the temple, for instance. Calvary.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, he's in Leviticus.
Okay, he's in Leviticus. Did you discover any new ones for yourself?
Oh, this book just scratches the surface. I was just thinking just today, like of the last trumpet and the first trumpet. You know, the whole giving of the law is a picture of Jesus and the second coming, but it's not in the book because there's all kinds of things that aren't in the book that speak of Jesus. Jesus is almost every page. This is only a 200-page book.
Wow. Any additional prophecies you discovered as far as his crucifixion that you discovered?
Okay, well, the Psalms, Psalm 22 and Psalm 69 talk about the crucifixion. The story of David and Goliath is a picture of the crucifixion, where David takes on Goliath and then defeats him in an unlikely way, and then takes his sword and cuts off his head. You go, how's that a picture of the crucifixion? Because it took the tool of the enemy and killed him. And the tool of the enemy in the crucifixion is the Roman crucifixion. And Jesus did an unexpected thing, and then he took that death that we deserved. And Satan, how madly incensed he must have been when he found out 3 days later that Jesus isn't in the tomb. I mean, it's that proto-evangelicalism of Genesis chapter 3, and that you're going to wound his heel and he's going to crush your head. And that Satan must have thought he beat the rap when he killed the Messiah. I mean, it's kind of like C.S. Lewis's book of, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the lion, gives his life,
right,
and then he comes back. How mad Satan must have been. I just think about that. It's like, ooh, he didn't get it. It says in Corinthians that he wouldn't have crucified the Lord of glory had he known that there'd be a bunch of little Christians running around that have Christ in us, the hope of glory.
Did you discover anything as it deals with the second coming of Christ?
Second coming is in the Old Testament all over the place. For instance, whenever you hear trumpets in the Old Testament, it's talking about the rapture and the second coming. So when the trumpet sounded long, when they're given the law, and it says that God descended over the mountain and the people came up. Then you have the 2 trumpets of silver, and silver is a picture of redemption in the Old Testament. And they would blow the trumpets for the convocation of the nation, for their solemn assemblies, for going to war, and there's one other thing that they would blow the trumpets for. Those are all the pictures that you see in the second coming, where it says in Thessalonians that you hear the voice, the shout, and the trump of God, and then that who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them and meet the Lord in the air. Of course, in the trumpet judgments, for instance, in the book of Revelation. So the Old Testament and the second coming are in there too. In fact, the Old Testament, we talk about Jesus in this book, but it pictures principles in the New Testament all over the place.
Such as?
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Sending away the flesh. Remember the story of Abraham and Sarah and Hagar and Ishmael. And Abraham was told to send her away with no provisions other than some mealy bread and some water. And then Paul tells us in the New Testament that that's an allegory, how we're supposed to send away the flesh, for instance. So the Old Testament principles are there. Another story would be in Judges chapter 6, where you see the story of Jabin, who's a general of the Canaanites or the Syrians. And they take on Barak and Deborah. And Deborah tells Barak to take him on and with all his chariots, and then they defeat Sisera and Jabin. But then Sisera runs to the tent of Jael, who is a Kenite, and it says that she pounded a stake in her head. And the stake, of course, is the spike of the crucifixion, and the hammer is the word, and that's sending away the flesh. Jabin is a picture of the flesh, for instance. So wow. There's some really deep stuff. You know, God's word is simple. I mean, confess Jesus as Lord and believe that God raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. But it's also super deep.
Wow.
And there's pictures everywhere because his ways are higher than our ways.
I mentioned earlier this morning, the only time I've ever heard a sermon of Jesus being depicted in all 66 books was the late Oral Roberts. He actually got up,
really,
and he took all 66 books and by memory, I might add.
That guy's amazing.
Notes,
I would believe that.
Yeah, and he would say what Jesus was in every book of the Bible.
Right on.
And it's quite a deal.
Yeah.
Do you think this will lead you over into the New Testament?
That's a good thought. That's a good thought. You know, the New Testament is, you know, kind of written to us.
A little bit more profound there.
Yeah, and they're love letters to us. But yeah, I think that's a good point. You're giving me food for thought too.
All right, now you come to the end of the Old Testament and then the 400 years of silence. How do you process that in your head?
400 years of silence. Well, you know, they were. That's a great question. You kind of stumped me there.
No, but you know, I mean, 4 in the Bible is the number of testing, and yeah, 40 days, 40
right,
on all those things. But you go into the 400 and you think, all right, so the Old Testament ends and the New Testament begins, but there's this gap there. And it's kind of like God went quiet for 400 years.
He did, but he didn't. I mean, during that time frame, you had
he gave us this with all the Jesus markings.
Right, but then those 400 years, you had problems. You had the Greeks take over, and Antiochus, you know, the guy who, and then the Maccabees, you know, revolted against him, and so we have Hanukkah that happened during those 400 years. Of course, Jesus alluded to Hanukkah at the Feast of Dedication several times. So I mean, things were happening even though we don't have scriptures from it. It's still, I think, a spiritual time for the nation, especially with the Maccabees, you know, in 100 BC or so.
All right, so why is it important? I mean, I'm going to maybe answer my own question, but why is it important for Christians to see Jesus in the Old Testament? From your perspective?
I think that if you see Jesus in the Old Testament, it brings the New Testament alive, because we talked about that he's everywhere in the Bible. You know, obviously the New Testament's written to us. Those are letters from God to us, telling us, you know, doctrine, reproof, and correction, if you will. In fact, it says all Scripture is given for doctrine, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be thoroughly perfected. But the Old Testament is kind of more subtle at that. It kind of talks about rules and regulations, so that not only can we're saved by faith and not of works, but we're created for good works. It says right after that where it talks about we're saved by faith, but we're created for good works that we could walk in. That Old Testament kind of gives us this kind of guidance. And no, we don't have to. We're crucified to the law. But let's say I don't follow the law. There's going to be repercussions. So the Old Testament is important, even though that we're not under the Old Testament rules and regulation. It's still critical part of our life, I think.
Well, and I think another part of this is that I think so often Christians are taught to read the Old Testament for history, and that's certainly fine.
Right.
But have you ever read the Old Testament to look for Christ in it?
It's not just rules and regulation.
Right.
It's not just Jewish history, but it's singing about Jesus.
All right. The book is entitled On the Road to Emmaus, Seeing Jesus in the Old Testament. Dr. Dan will be at Evangel tomorrow from 1 until 3. That's Evangel there in the Rogue Valley Mall for a book signing. And then Sunday, he'll be speaking at the Calvary Chapel there in Grants Pass, filling in for Pastor Denny Stahl. So you may want to check that out if you're in the Grants Pass area.
Yeah, 9 and 11 are the services that day.
9 and 11, okay. And this isn't fair, I got 30 seconds. Going back to your birth pains, where do you think we are in the timeline of birth pains and the coming of Christ?
We're late in the third trimester. If you look at Genesis, from the time from Adam is 6,000 years. So each trimester is 2,000 years. The third trimester started when those two angels said that Jesus that you saw leave, he's going to come back the same way. That was the beginning of the third trimester. We're toward the end of it now.
All right, you may want to pick up that book too. Good to see you. Congratulations, man.
Totally my pleasure.
Let's do it again, okay?
Okay.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.